who don't know, our topic for today is presentation skills. And it's extremely important, like Ayush said, because we do this in college, we do this in our workplace. And not only that, nowadays, a lot of schools as well. In high school, a lot of students are asked to make presentations and all of that. So it's very important, yes. So the reason why we're doing this, though, why are we covering it today, is I would say it's because of two reasons. One reason is because even though at our office space we are asked to make presentations on a daily basis, right? You could agree. We are asked to make presentations to everything. But for some reason, it's not taught in school. It's not taught as a course. Obviously, at Alpha Board, if you sign up with us, we will teach you those skills. But that's one of the reasons we're doing the live today, because you all don't get to learn this in your high school. Another reason, like Ayush said, is because the workplace environment, we need to make many presentations, and a lot of people are good at presentations, but they're not very good at speaking. They're not very good at communicating what they've made. So that's exactly why we're doing this today.
And you know what, like whenever I think of a presentation, it reminds me of Steve Jobs, because the way he used to handle the stage, the way he used to deliver the presentation, charm the audience out, I mean, amazing, right?
I know, I completely agree. Yes. I feel like, yeah, Steve Jobs was also, it was his marketing. His presentations was the marketing of his products.
Definitely.
Yes. So anyways, we're going to move on to the first tip that I would suggest for you guys. So before we get into how to introduce a presentation, because usually that's the first tip that you see on every website, anything that you research, I would suggest, guys, first tip or first group of tips would be related to the actual presentation itself. All right. So how do we start? Always remember, guys, that your layout of the presentation is very important when it comes to capturing the audience's attention. So the first thing that I would suggest is your first page should always have a very large, bold heading, right? So the second you see a very bold heading, you already know what the presentation is about, don't you think?
Right. And definitely, I think people nowadays can relate it to more, because first of all, they are having so many Zoom sessions, and if you have to like zoom in to see what's the text, right? It is not at all possible.
Exactly,
And
it's not possible.
many of us do it from our phone, so big text is definitely essential.
Exactly. So I would definitely say bold. Okay. And one thing about your font, guys, make sure your font is consistent throughout the presentation. Don't change your font. And you know what? Sometimes I see presentations, and don't you see like there are very funny fonts, curly fonts, and all of that? What do you think the effect of these fonts have on the viewer when we look at a presentation?
Right. See, in my opinion, it is like a college guy who is trying to be a cool person.
Right. Yeah. And it's sometimes confusing. You don't even know what the words are when it's curly. So I would say, yeah, just a basic Arial font consistently. And also, one thing that's very good for the design is make sure that the font size is the same throughout the presentation. Right. And this is a basic thing, but keep the headings, the font of the heading, larger than the font of the body.
Right.
All right, always. Another thing that people miss in the presentations, Ayush, what would you think? What would you say is one thing that you see in presentations and it just puts you off?
Right. So the one thing that definitely puts me off in a presentation is a very striking contrast of colors. Like if people have someone, they have a green background and then they have a pink text, right? It is so much pain in the eyes to see.
Exactly. A lot of people do that. So guys, advice, just stick with a white background, clean, simple and sleek, and a black text. In case you want to highlight something, try to put that in color. All right. So that's one tip. And Ayush, yes, that's a very good observation. The next thing that really bugs me about presentations is that a lot of people continuously put paragraphs in their presentations. And doesn't that sometimes kind of bore us, kinds of distracts us while we're in the presentation? What do you think?
Definitely. And I think it is ironic the way presentations were made to have a concise report. But nowadays we are putting paragraphs in a PPT, and yeah, it is ironic in nature.
Yeah, it's ironic in nature because, guys, the point of a presentation is that your points need to be well defined and you shouldn't cram up a lot of information. So when it comes to layout, just remember 2 3 things. Make sure your font is the same size. Make sure you're putting more images and keywords and not filling it with paragraphs, because I'm telling you, I'm assuring you, whoever it is, it could be the CEO, the president, they're not reading your paragraphs. Like, it's not happening, they're not interested. Now that we moved into the layout, let's move more into the speaking. Like I said, a presentation has 2 things. One is the actual presentation, the PPT that takes place, and the second one is like talking and presenting and persuading in your presentation. Yeah. So the first thing that I would suggest is we start with an introduction. So Ayush, if I came to you and I just gave you a very boring, plain introduction that today we are going to be discussing global warming or something,
Right.
how would you feel about that?
I mean, I think this reminds me of that particular research that I read, that if you do not grasp the attention of a person within the 7 seconds, then you have lost it, right?
Exactly.
So, and I mean, it can be crucial when you are especially appearing for your interviews or maybe for your final exams. This thing can be crucial that the person who is listening to must be interested in that.
Yes, guys, Ayush has just brought up a very good point that these days presentations also determine our exams and how much we're paying attention.
Right.
So definitely, like, we need to make it very you need to make it very interesting. And yeah, so your introduction, I would suggest something whimsical. The meaning of whimsical, guys, if you don't know, is something a little quirky, something a little lively. How would you say, uh, if you were to give me advice on a whimsical introduction, what would you suggest to me?
Right. So I would like to continue your example of global warming only.
Right.
So if Hindi is allowed, then I would go something like कि क्या गर्मी ने करा है आपका बुरा हाल. But
Yes.
jokes apart, but jokes
Exactly.
apart, if it is a formal presentation, so then I would go maybe something like very serious, like, do you know about Greta Thunberg, the activist who is constantly fighting for global warming, something
Yes.
like that. I'll start with
Right.
an anecdote or something, or maybe I'll say, remember the summer days when you are looking for a drink everywhere and you are not able to find it. Well, global warming is just increasing that thing. So
Exactly. I
if you
think
want
that's
to
a
enjoy
very
your
good.
summer,
Yes, that's a
right?
very attention grabbing introduction if we ask them a
Right.
question. And it also brings about some sort of engagement with the audience,
Definitely.
right? If you ask them a question, they will have to listen to you and answer and actually think about what you're asking. Always, yeah, a
Definitely.
good personal story is also very good to grab the attention of the audience. Also, viewers, I'd also like to remind you guys that any questions about presentations or anything like that, please drop it down. We're not here to just blabber our heads off. We're here to also answer your questions. So please comment any questions that you might have, and we will continue. All right. So,
But Koraki, I
yes.
think today we will need to switch roles because I have to set my phone very far away and I cannot happen to read the comments.
All
So
right,
you
all
will have
right.
to read it
Okay,
yourself.
I will read the comments and both of us can answer the questions.
Yeah,
All right.
sure.
Okay, so yeah, so the introduction is always a very good thing to start off with, and like you said, the first 7 seconds are most important. Now we have to move into more of general tips that I would give you while you're presenting. First thing, always make eye contact while presenting and smile. For example, if I was giving a presentation or even if I was doing a live session with you and I was not making eye contact, I was looking everywhere but at you and at the audience, how would that make you feel, like, as the audience, as a viewer?
Definitely. Right? I think we can all remember that one teacher who is always expressionless and he's just writing and speaking and we are not at all interested and we feel like sleeping. So don't be that guy, guys.
Yes, don't be
Join the
that guy.
alpha
Yeah.
course. Yeah. We
Yeah.
will teach you how to not be that guy.
Yes, exactly. So how do we how I would say the first tip to make sure that you're not boring people is
Right.
your voice modulation. You need to make sure that your voice is striking enough to make sure that someone's not sleeping while you're presenting. So definitely voice modulation. Another thing that I would suggest is use your hands. It's called body language. Like, use your hands to express various aspects. And that moves on to the other tip that I want to discuss. If I stood in front of you just with my hands to the side, how would that make?
Right.
Wouldn't you feel uncomfortable? Wouldn't you feel like,
No.
what kind of dictator is
Definitely.
standing in front of me?
Right.
Like, right? It would be a weird vibe between the presenter
Definitely.
and the audience if I was just standing here and looking at you, like, at your face, you know.
Right.
So you guys remember that you always have to be warm when you're presenting, and you
Right.
need to also be approachable, because in a presentation, a lot of people also have questions and various
Right.
other things. So definitely make sure your body language is right. Okay, I just want to read a comment, because you can't read Ayush because it's far away from you.
Yeah.
Okay, someone is saying hello. Someone is saying body postures will more. Okay, they're trying to say that body postures are very powerful. Yes, that is exactly what we were saying. That you need to make sure also, it's not all about like keeping your hands to the side. It's also about like standing straight. You need to make sure
Right.
you're standing straight. You need to make sure your posture is straight. You're not like, hunching and talking to people. It's also a sense of like respect. Like you aren't
Right.
supposed to hunch down when you're talking to a CEO,
Definitely.
president, even a colleague. So
Right.
that's also very important.
Right. And in fact, what I think, that there is this life hack. People say that you should walk so to grab the attention of the audience. But what people usually do is they walk very fast. So it is more distracting than taking the attention. I feel like if someone is saying and then they are constantly looking on the floor and then they're walking right to left, right, left, right, left. I mean, it is even more confusing.
It's very distracting,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
also, guys, remember, like, I understand for a lot of people, when they're not used to presenting, they keep a lot of cards near them, and they keep their notes and their laptop. A lot of people, because they want to avoid eye contact with, there might be someone senior looking at your presentation, and that's very, very intimidating. Like, I completely understand that. So they avoid eye contact. They look at the screen where they're presenting. They look at the projector. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that at all. That's the just the wrong thing to do it. Because, like, how are you supposed to um, keep the attention of the audience when you're not looking at them? You know what I mean? Yeah, so that's very important. The next one is to avoid distractions. Now, what does avoid distractions means? It means that when we're presenting with a projector or whatever it is, we can admit that sometimes it can get a little technical, right? We could be given like a clicker, we could be given a remote, and we could sometimes fumble with the equipment that we're given. But Ayush, I would like to ask you. I'm sure you've been a part of those presentations where they're
Yes.
struggling to present.
Right.
What is your thought flow when that happens, when you see something like that?
Right. So I usually try to counter embarrassment with the humor, right? So once it happened that I was hosting a show and there we tried to play a video. It didn't run the first time. Then we tried the second time, it didn't run. And then after a while, we tried again the third time and it still didn't run.
Yeah.
So I just quoted straight from that poem, who is the father of Abhishek Bachchan.
Yeah.
Not Abhishek Bachchan, but Amitabh Bachchan,
Yeah.
Harivansh Rai Bachchan ji. And he has this poem कि कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. And then I
Hmm.
said कि वीडियो तो आज हम आपको दिखा के ही जाएंगे. And the audience burst into laughter.
Yes.
So they ignored the problem altogether and the focus was changed. So that is what I tried to do. I pivot.
That's a very good tip. That's a
Yeah,
very good tip, guys. You can always like distract the audience, and
definitely.
that actually goes on to my next tip, that you should be a little like have a little humor, little whimsy when you're talking to the audience. But it depends on the situation as well, the setting as well. So if you're with your college friends, your professor, it's fine to have that humor. But when you're in front of your boss
Right.
that you're not very familiar with, maybe a boss from another department that you don't share that relationship with, that's a little tricky. So how do we prepare? Yeah, exactly. So how do we prepare? I would say make sure you know the technicalities of your projector, your laptop, whatever beforehand. Practice makes
Definitely.
perfect. And when it comes to these important presentations, don't gamble. Like, you should always just practice. Okay. Let me just
Yeah.
read a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
um,
Sure.
Okay, so Sudhansh says, so how can I look at my notes, which I keep in my laptop while I'm presenting? So Ayush, do you have an insight on this?
Right. So I don't know if it is true or not, but I recently saw a reel or a TikTok where the guy said there is some extension that gives you a transparent note. So basically, you can read it, but the persons cannot. So it can
I
be a
didn't know
helpful
this.
model.
Okay, that's really
Yeah.
great. Thank you. I will use that.
Yeah.
I have a very stereotypical answer, but it's something that's helped me a lot.
All
Just
right.
prepare, guys. Just prepare your notes. Just study. Like, just because we're in office and all doesn't mean we're above studying. Always know you're
Definitely.
never too young to study. Never. So
Yeah.
just study your notes and you will remember. So, yeah.
No,
So you don't always have to
definitely
keep
I
looking at your
feel.
laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely I feel this is the problem with our generation. Instead of doing the actual team, we try to find the sideways. अरे भाई
Of course.
prepare
Yeah.
कर लो अच्छे से हो जाएगा.
Yeah, exactly. Um, right. So now, the next point that I would like to talk about is just what I said to answer this question. Always be prepared and practice and all of that. But how do we practice? How do we practice, this presentation, like these notes and all of that? Like, we can't just always talk to ourselves and, read the notes. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people, like you said, they use different techniques to avoid it, is because it can be a little boring. So one thing that I would suggest is, why don't you present to your family? Play the
Right.
PowerPoint presentation and move through the slides and do a test run with your family and take feedback from them, because your family could also have insights on how you are speaking. So I would think that's one method. Would you have any other suggestions to what we could do to practice for a presentation?
Yeah. So usually what I do is I look at the mirror and I try presenting it
Yeah.
because, and yeah, there is one thing that many people do, they record themselves and see it. But the reason I don't do that and I do not recommend that is we don't like our voice in the recording, right? So
Right.
it just makes me conscious that my voice is not good or something like that. So
Hmm.
I always practice in front of mirror. And
Right.
countering your point, you said that you can show it to your family. I was just wondering if I would show my presentations to my mom, she would be laughing mostly.
Yeah, I completely understand that as well, guys. That also happens. So maybe a colleague that you're friends
Yeah,
with, maybe, or you could just tell your
definitely.
family that, this time just don't laugh at me. This time I need little
Right.
help. Yeah. Another thing that I would also recommend doing is timing yourself. Always time
Definitely.
yourself, because guys, I'm going to move to the next point about timing. But when I say time yourself, I mean that put like a the stopwatch and give put because my personal insight is, when we really need to present something and we really need to persuade a CEO or an executive, we just want to keep going. We
Right.
just want to take all the time in the world, because this is our one shot. So there
Right.
could be a time where we just get carried away. Remember, you can't do that. You can't get carried away with time. So make sure you're doing it at an appropriate amounts of time, and put a stopwatch. Um, there's another comment um, that says, actually, my communication skill is not good as required today itself. I gave a presentation about a case managing up. Okay, I'm not fully understanding. Okay. So basically, what they're trying to say is that his communication skill is not. Sudansh is saying that his communication skill is not very good. And he did try to make a presentation for one of his colleagues, and his eye contact was not very great. So can you give some tips to me? Okay, my tip on eye contact would be that I know you don't always want to look someone in the eye. Even when we're not presenting, it can be a little uncomfortable to look someone in the eye, because you know that you're making
Right.
eye contact with them. We've all felt that uncomfortability. I get it. I suggest look at their head, or look at right above, like maybe like the middle of their eyebrows, or focus on the forehead. It'll
Right.
it seems like you're talking to them. They will feel like you're engaging with them. All right. So what do you think? Do you have any other tips on eye contact?
No, I follow generally the same thing, and I
Yeah.
think the best way to counter it is practice only. The more you practice, the more you familiar get.
Yeah.
The more familiar you get with it.
Exactly. And
Right?
I think the thing
Yeah,
about eye contact, why people get nervous, is because they aren't used to speaking. you know
definitely.
they feel a little intimidated. So the more you practice your speaking and your fluency increases, like you said, Sudhansh, your communication is not very good, and that might be a reason why you feel a little nervous while while making presentations. So definitely work on that. And also, if you require more help at Alpha Board, we will help you. So just DM us, or even drop a comment and we will DM you. So yeah, and we can do a course with you. Um, yes. So after timing yourself, I would definitely say three things that are very important. It would be confident, okay,
Right.
speak freely, and avoid filler words. Be confident. Everybody knows that we need to be confident while making presentations. That's a key. If you're not
Right.
confident in making a presentation, especially when most presentations in the corporate world have to do with pitching an idea and pitching a project, if you're not confident, your boss is going to say to you like, you're not confident about your idea, why would we be confident in you? So the whole point is showing that you're so confident within what you believe in, and you're kind of oozing that confidence and making sure they feel it too. That's one thing. So
Yeah,
how to be,
definitely.
yes, tell me. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, I would like to plug two of your points in here. One, you said confidence, and the other is the being time bound, right? So if you people are aware, you should just search the word the elevator pitch. So right, it is very popular in the startup world that suppose you have a great idea and you are there in a lift with the CEO, and now you only have 1 minute to present yourself. So in that 1 minute, you have to express most of your idea, and you have to be confident in order to get investment or something like that. So
Yeah.
do practice, guys. Yeah, keep reading also.
Yes, do practice speaking, because presentation is all about speaking mainly. And the third one is avoid filler words. Now, a lot of people get confused with what a filler word is, and it's just simply when people say and and all of that, and it's just natural. We can't control these words. Even when I speak, I say and I just said it. But we have to try to avoid these when we're making presentations in excess. It's normal to say it, regularly, because when people are trying to communicate their thoughts, um, and but when it's in excess and you can tell they're being very nervous, when someone says, okay, so,
Right.
that's a problem.
That reminds me of the Viva scenes when teacher used to ask question and we are like
Yes.
looking at the
Yeah,
wall
yeah,
and
vivas,
pretending we
vivas.
don't. Yeah,
The traumatic parts of my life you're talking about.
definitely.
Yeah. Another thing that I remember that's a personal story of mine, guys. If you go look at my live, the first live I did, it's full of uhs and ums. I was so nervous. It comes out of being nervous when you're not used to something. You're instantly saying uhs and ums. Another reason why people say uhs and ums is because they forget some information. So what can we
Definitely.
say instead of uhs and ums? I would suggest just say, okay, can I have a minute to collect my thoughts? Or just give me a minute. So instead of going for 2 minutes straight, you can actually say, give me a minute, think about what you need to say,
Right.
process and structure your sentences, and you speak.
Right.
So yeah.
And you know what, guys? There is one other life hack around it. Like, if you are stuck at some point, if you are not able to remember it, just throw a question at the audience and then say that, why don't you think about it for a minute? So then
Yes.
you will not have to lose your confidence as well.
That's a very good point. That is a very
Right.
smart point. Yes, I definitely think you should do that too, guys. That's very good. So Dan, okay, there's another comment that says, between the presentation, sometimes I forget some points. Yes, that does happen. And like I said before, one way of remembering, if I'd like to bring about this point, one way of remembering for me is writing. I feel like personally, the more I write, the more I remember. So if you do feel a little nervous before your presentation, why don't you write? Write, and then you
Yeah.
can understand what exactly, which slide you need to say what. Also make those cards, like they're called index cards.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
keep like an index card saying, slide one, I will say this, and you practice those index cards for 2 days, one day, you'll be
Right.
good. Yes. Yeah.
And
Uh,
one more thing, guys, we are the victim of our own expectation as well, right? The perfect presentation does not exist. So right after every presentation, you will be looking at yourself and be like, यार ये क्या हो गया? ये क्या हो गया? हर बार होगा आपके साथ, but you get better with time. So be comfortable with the process itself.
yeah, guys, we've all been there, where we've all been there when we did our first presentation, and our expectation of our first presentation in school was so different from what happened. Some malfunction, some tech issue, and it's always been a very like, oh my god, like my world's gonna end, this was so bad. But it gets better with practice. It really gets so easy, to a point where you can be told to make a presentation the next hour and it'll be nothing to you. So practice
Right.
makes perfect. Now,
Definitely.
just to sidetrack a little bit, we have someone who wants us to introduce yourself. So Ayush, please do so. And yeah.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Ayush Rathi and I work as a category manager at Board Infinity. And here in this live session, we have with us Opti. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes. So, right. So, Ayush today is our host, and today the coach. Hi, my name is Kauriki. I work at Board Infinity under Alpha Board, and I'm a communication coach. So, yeah, I hope that introduction was good for you guys. Okay. Okay. There's another comment right here. He said he's an MBA student. All right. So he said when you're an MBA student, I'm not an MBA student yet, but he said only bullet points are allowed. You're not supposed to write in your presentation. Yes, no one. I'm not saying write in your presentation, like, put paragraphs within your presentation. I'm saying before your presentation, maybe one day before or 2 days before, if you're feeling nervous about speaking, write like your own like thoughts about each slide, so because I don't know, Ayush, do you feel like when you mug up, or do you feel like when you write you remember more? What is your take?
Right. So one thing that I generally avoid is to fixate things. Like I will do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this. I just have some flexible points that I know I have to discuss, and then I discuss them in any order.
Exactly. This is another point, guys. Don't stick to a pattern. Don't mug up a pattern. If you have like 5 points or 4 points that you want to discuss, you can look at your screen. You can read out the point from your screen. But the information under each point, don't mug that up.
Right.
Understanding is better than mugging up. So understand the concept. Let's say I had a point and there's a very fixed, explanation to what I'm saying. And then in the middle of the
Right.
presentation, I forget the next sentence. You'd rather have an understanding and then you can explain to them in your own words, in your own warmth, your own body language. That'd be much better than the flow is much better than when you're mugging up, for sure.
Definitely.
Yes. I think we have another comment saying, yeah, exactly, ma'am. I solve problems because I'm okay. Yeah. So he's just trying to say that, he's through that, he tried to solve that problem through the presentation. Okay. Next. So yeah, definitely don't mug up a speech. Don't do any of that. Just try to explain it, try to understand it in your own words. Now, there's something that is very important, and this is my last point for today. No, not my last point, my second last point. Okay, we're not done yet. Okay, my second last point for today would be the timing, which I mentioned before. Always time yourself. But there's a specific timing as per research. There's a specific timing that has been prescribed, and people say it's the ideal timing. Now, like we've discussed before, Ayush, there's always a need when we're in a presentation, when we're really, really prepared. It can push to 2 hours. Let's admit it's something that can happen. It can really push, and genuinely, they are not going to pay attention to you, even if it's the most important presentation of the company. They will not sit for 2 hours and listen to you. No one will. They're going to get bored. So, research says that 18 minutes is the most ideal time for a presentation. So you should finish your presentation between 18 to 20 minutes. Okay. A lot of people now, what do you think? What would you suggest as the perfect time for a presentation? Personally, as you watch a presentation, when do you want it to end? At what time?
Right, right. So basically, I like the 7 to 8 minute time frame because I don't think people nowadays even have the 18 minutes time frame to focus
That's
on
so
one thing.
true. That's true
Right.
also. Yeah, so in school or college, I would suggest a 7 to 8 minute
Yes.
presentation. But again, in a professional, again, it depends on the
Definitely.
situation. Yeah, it would be 20 minutes. Now, um, there are a lot of times where a presentation can cross uh, 18 minutes and 20 minutes. And this is very important, guys. So, how do we make our presentation interesting and how do we engage our audience after 18 minutes or 20 minutes? Like, what do we do? So, I would suggest Q&As in the middle of your presentations. When we just take a break, you can stop in your middle of the presentation and say, let's take a break from the presentation and let's do a quick Q&A. You can also say, let's collect some data and we can do an interesting Q&A. Another one would also be like a quiz. Okay, a quiz as in asking questions at the end of your presentation based on the content that has been shared, right? And the third one would definitely be play a game. So if you play a game in the middle of your presentation, and you take a break from the lecture that you're giving people, it's definitely going to be very entertaining for the audience. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So your last point that is very important. Also, guys, if you have any more questions, because we're coming to the end of our live, if you have any more questions, please put it down. If you can't and we end our live, you can always send us DMs. You can always comment on our post, whatever it is. We're here to communicate with you guys. And Alpha Board Infinity, we are accounts that reach out to our commenters. We go to you guys. So anything is fine. Any form of communication is okay. For the last point, so Ayush, what do you think is the best form of concluding a presentation in your opinion?
Right. See, the ultimate goal of a presentation is that whatever I wanted to convey to the audience, if they understand it, then I am happy. That whatever I wanted to say, they understand it now. So even if it is not, very charming environment or not if everyone is happy, but if they at least understand what I was trying to communicate, then I'm always happy about that.
Yeah. So a way of exactly. So a way of concluding our presentation would be also to summarize the points that you're trying to make.
Definitely.
Right? You're trying to summarize like this is what I've said, and also I would say place your stance on the topic. Like for example, a global warming. You can say, in the end, you can say I personally believe that global warming is the cause of whatever. That's also good.
Right.
Also, like a strong opinion. You could say global warming is not only bad for human beings, but it could also ruin the planet Earth. And you conclude your presentation. You drop a bomb, literally a bomb before you leave.
Definitely.
It's something that the audience will remember. That this was a very strong statement that they made. So I would suggest that's a good conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, we can end it with a quotation or something like that as
Of
well.
course, yeah. A quotation also by someone famous or whatever would also work. Yeah. So, guys, if you don't have any more questions for today, we will end our session. You guys have been great. Ayush, you have been great.
Right.
And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah. Okay.
And you know what, guys? Before ending the session, I have one secret pill for you that can make your journey to learn English or maybe communication skills. It can accelerate your journey. Well, guess what? You can follow Alpha Board and we keep on coming on live. Even if you watch those sessions, then you can improve a lot. Right? With that said, signing off, your host Ayush Rathi.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.